December 20th, common council meeting in order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Again, I will call the December 20th common council meeting in order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson.
Here.
Alderman Hopfer.
Here.
Alderwoman Eichman.
Here.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Here.
Alderwoman Hanneman is not present. Alderman Barber.
Aye.
And
Here.
Alderman Nelson.
Here. We have a quorum. Please rise and join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get to citizens' comment, I just want to wish all of you and those watching on YouTube a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. This is the, I want to say the fourth day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. And I hope you all have a great holiday season with your friends and family. And it's second day, yeah. And hope you all have a great holiday season. And everybody wish our Department of Public Works Superintendent Kevin Schlueter a good Thursday and Friday. With that, I will open up the citizens' comment period. Any citizen wishing to speak, please rise, come forward, give us your name, and try to keep it to 3 minutes.
Leroy Lewandowski, 8030 West Winston Way. I look at this, the proposal for this evening meeting, and it's again after this 51.61 acres behind my property. And I thought that this was going to take place in January 5, and what's it doing on the agenda today? And then you've got it on item 1. People didn't know that this was being handed. What are we doing? I thought, is it on January 5 or what? I'm asking you, Mayor.
This is for a public hearing that's previously noticed prior to the Plan Commission meeting where it was tabled, where other items were tabled. It's a separate item, and we'll take action of some form.
Are we going to have something January 5th on this item?
I don't know that it'll be January 5th, but in the future, yes. Mr. City Attorney.
The council action sheet for this item states that the recommendation is the matter be continued. The public hearing will be continued to the January 17th Common Council meeting. So it will be after the Plan Commission meets on the subject again on January 5th. But it was previously noticed before the Plan Commission put it over, so there was a public notice already out there saying this is when the public hearing starts. That's the only reason it's on this agenda.
When I bought my property, this zoning was set. That's 30 years ago. There's no reason to change it because that's what it's supposed to be. You change, or the city and the school district destroy the neighborhood by blocking Southview. They put the school district there, the building, because they made a mistake and couldn't keep that other school building clean of carbon monoxide. They did it in a hurry. That was supposed to be a park. We do not have a park in our area. I'm asking my alderman to see that we get something done. And I've got a couple that lives in my neighborhood at 7510 Nottingham that has never stopped at the stop sign. I can't get the police to stop. They're always got a black and white sitting there. I need some help in that area. And now you're going to try to, none of my neighbors want this thing to go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Taylor, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Common Council. I don't know how I follow that up, but I'm going to try. I guess one day that'll be me. Steve Taylor, 2812 West Hilltop Lane. I'm here to talk about Resolution 2022-7863, which was something that the Common Council passed in May, on May 17th. It's regarding the stormwater and Milwaukee County land. I'm going to give a little bit of history, and then I want to bring some stuff to your attention. I've been around long enough to know if the mayor doesn't support something, resolutions that this council adopts somehow go to die and they're never heard from again. And I'm not sure if that's the case on this or not, but it's good to talk about it now. I've been talking to Mayor Olson regarding his desire to have 10 acres of stormwater management placed on county land since before I got back on the county board. So I would say a year ago this time, easily talking about it. And then I got elected in April. And then I remember coming to a couple common council meetings when the code of conduct was taking place, the code of conduct discussion, and I was reading it and looking at the fact that I thought that the council was going to lose some power to the mayor's office and saying that it was not good policy, and obviously has happened. And so to give you guys a little more authority, I said I'll negotiate, or the county, if it comes to us, and knowing that's in my district and knowing how the county executive and park staff handles things, they let the supervisor of the district take care of it, that you guys would have to give the mayor and staff authorization to negotiate. So that was done on May 17th. August 23rd, there was 3 letters sent from Mayor Olson, Alderwoman Hanneman, one to the county executive, one to the parks director, one to myself. It's a nice packet of information, talks about the development, the requests, the needs, why building a stormwater pond, retention pond on county land was in the best interest of the county, the taxing authorities, and the city of Franklin. I met with Peggy and John Regetz and Sherry Hanneman on August 20th. So a couple months went by. We had a meeting, I thought a very productive meeting, very cordial meeting. And basically here was the terms. It was not going to be free. It was going to be 10 acres for $700,000. That's exactly what I told the county executive. That's what I told the parks director. And that's what I told one of my colleagues on the parks committee, because I got to get this done. So what basically that deal entailed was all $700,000 would be kept in Milwaukee County, half of which would be in the city of Franklin, some of it at Groveschmidt Park, some of it Fitzsimmons Wood, and if there's anything remaining, the Franklin Savannah. Basically putting half of that back into our park system that would benefit our residents. The other half would go to City of Milwaukee County Park in Supervisor Martin's district. That's who I decided to partner up with. She has a real issue with any blade of grass, any county property not kept within our control. And knowing how the makeup of the board is, going through previous land transactions where the Amazon is Oak Creek, with the Ballpark Commons project, I did what I thought was necessary to get it done. Like I said, that was the meeting. That ended, and a couple months went by. Hadn't heard anything. Reached out to Alderwoman Hanneman. We had a conversation because I basically was saying, if we're going to do this, let's do it now, because some of the stuff that I want to do at the county level would need future additional dollars, and I want to put into next year's budget. So if we're going to do it, we're going to do it now. If we're not, and you decide you want to do it later on, the price is going to go up. Simple negotiating, right? And I actually now, the price that we talked about in that meeting, I'll tell you, you probably couldn't even do it now for that amount, because I don't know if you paid attention to the Waukesha water deal that just took place, where there was that easement that they needed from Milwaukee County, 0.75 acres. Waukesha water utility offered $100,000. So that's $135,000 an acre. And the county board, which I supported moving forward at that amount, the county board in negotiations, it was now $250,000. So way more than the $70,000 that I basically talked to Sherry, John, and Peggy about. And oh, by the way, in the document that was presented to me, and I know the Common Council as well, if you didn't do it on county land, you have to do it within the business park. and you'd have to purchase property, and it's the Biller property, and that's like 5 acres, and I think the approximate price is 600,000, so that's 120,000 an acre. So I actually think that, and that money will leave Milwaukee County and the city of Franklin. So the reason I'm bringing this forward is because if you're going to do something, I mean, I don't think you were even aware of this, at least the aldermen that I've talked to. So I'm putting this on the record that if you guys want to take this conversation further, then you guys should put it, maybe on an agenda and talk about it. Otherwise, my question is, what's going on? I mean, it was such an urgency before I took office. It was an urgency to bring in a resolution 2 weeks after I said you needed one to negotiate. And it's been crickets of that term, crickets, since our meeting on August 20th. So that's why I was here. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Alderman Nelson.
I'd like to see this on the next agenda, first agenda in January for discussion.
Happy to do it. The
Thank you.
reason it hasn't been on the agendas is we don't have a document to talk about. Got a verbal offer. So Supervisor, if you get us a document with your offer, we'll talk about it.
Well, I would have figured that that conversation would have went to the Common Council to see if that's something you guys are interested in doing. I mean, I told you I told Peggy, John, and Sherry. Never was told I needed an offer in writing. And in fact, if Alderwoman Hanman was here, she would confer. I'm pretty sure, because what she told me is, you can not worry about doing this because I don't have $700,000 for you. So that was a verbal back and forth. I didn't have that in writing either. So this was a conversation, being very, straightforward, very cordial. But for some reason, it didn't go anywhere. If that's something, and I know what the conversation is, let me know if you want to continue talking, because the next steps would be then to have, the county, Parks Department, county lawyers. I mean, you're gonna have all that stuff drafted, because Ms. Steno was talking about, well, how soon do you need the money? Could you take it over a period of time? I mean, those are all things in an agreement that would have to be between the county and the city. But I reached out for the meeting because of what was sent to me. The meeting was had, and then nothing's happened since. So you want me to send you an email? I can send you a damn email when I go home and say, here's what it is. But the reality is that price probably is not even good now, based on what we just dealt with the Waukesha Water. And if you want to pay $120,000 to Scott Biller, that's fine. Or if something else is going on, this council needs to know, because they passed unanimously, you signed a resolution, and those things have taken place, but it's not come back to this body. And you're notorious for doing these things, of burying resolutions that never see the light of day. Good?
You're entitled to your opinion. But yes, please send me or Council President or Ms. Steno an email with what the offer is, because we don't do things without documentation. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Russ Pleva, 7259 South Cambridge Drive. First, I want to thank you for putting all the meetings on YouTube. It's been very helpful for people like myself, especially the last 2 years, to be able to see the meetings in person. I want to thank you again for keeping taxes mild the last couple of years, so I appreciate that as well. I'm here today, though. I agree with the prior citizen talking about rezoning. I was in a neighborhood, I live in Cambridge Drive, that was affected by the Rock property, and that was rezoned. That was property that was next door that was rezoned. One of the issues or concerns I have is the banner that's up here. I've pointed out multiple times that I've spoke at this chambers. It's a 70-30 mix again. So we have some very heavily traveled and trafficked areas that are being rezoned from commercial and retail to mixed use. And I think the mixed use, sometimes it starts out mixed use. And I had a file back at home that's about this thick of all the articles I've had over the years. And I think when you look back at the Rock property in the records that I had, plans that were presented to this committee in March of 16 had a lot of retail. And one of them was a sports village. It talked about all the great retail and everything that was going to be put in. and it's on record in part of the committee meetings. From that one to September of 16 to November of 17, to what we actually have in place, the retail component of all these developments has shrunk. So again, we're seeing plans tonight for mixed use. There's talk about retail, articles in the paper about retail in the Orchard area. There was, the Bad Axe was done recently. That originally on the rock plans as part of the TIF and the TID project was going to be, again, commercial, hotel, again, retail, a lot of different things were named, but it ended up being, again, apartments. So I think there is going to be a great density in the city of Franklin with all this apartments as proposed. But I think my request to the Common Council is have a requirement that is zoned and is not changed. It's not this general area that there is retail as part of this. If a developer wants to put in, and the Mandel product is great, but have a component that sticks as retail, because with the density, it should finally attract retail. I think all the citizens of Franklin want retail. That's what was the buzz when the original Rock was there. That's what everybody wanted. But where we stand today, that hasn't developed yet. And I think people are tired of going to Greendale, Greenfield, Oak Creek, and Hales Corners to go to restaurants, bars, and other things. That's what people wanted. That's what they were excited about when I went to the original meetings 5, 7, 8 years ago. So that's just my request, and again, just an observation. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Anybody else has a comment on the master plan? Hold it to the hearing so it gets on the record. Mr. Pelkey.
Hello, Andy Pelkey, 9320 West Grandview Court. I just want to say something very briefly about open records law. I have had difficulty getting records in a timely manner, and I don't think I'm the only person. The law itself provides that an authority must either fulfill a public record or notify the requester of a denial within a reasonable period of time. It says as soon as practicable and without delay. So the as soon as practicable and without delay, of course, is not well defined. But the Department of Justice has a guidance which has been around for a very, very long time, which I think we can meet. And that is that it says the DOJ policy is that 10 working days is generally a reasonable time for responding to a simple request for a limited number of easily identifiable records. So that being said, I've got open records requests that are months old. And sometimes it takes months just to get a response that says there are no records. So as not to make a lot of work for anybody, my suggestion is this. Maybe the council should take a little interest in this and ask that the administration provide a report of open records requests that cannot be met within the 10 days. So you know, don't report on everything. We just need to know management by exception, what stuff cannot be reported in 10 days time. And then, you know, what did you tell the requester? Oh, you know, we'll have it in 3 weeks. Okay, great. So when did you actually get it to them? Was it 3 weeks or 3 months? I just think studying this, the exceptions a little bit might give us some insight into why it's taking so long. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Ms. Davis, good evening.
And thank you. Happy holidays to you, Mayor and esteemed council members. So, you know, there are a number of us that have gone on public record from the southwest part of Franklin concerned about decision-making processes around development. And that is a concern again today. I'm seeing some things in minutes and agendas, and I don't understand what they are. So, and they're related to waste management in District 6, close to where I live, 9460 South 96th Street. So, I was looking at, and I don't know exactly the relationship, but I was looking at the agenda and the minutes for the Economic Development Council over the summer. There was 3 months of agenda items that talked about asking for support for a proposal to study and apply for water diversion from the, I don't know, from the Mississippi Basin to the other basin so that they could look at putting in sewer in the southwest, in part of the southwest part of Franklin. And it doesn't say where. It's a request for up to $30,000 in taxpayer money in order to save money and time for the developer and to then submit an application to the DNR. And I watched the agendas for the Common Council, and it was approved by the Economic Development Council, and I'm not sure if this is their jurisdiction to look at District 6 and the development there. But anyway, it was approved, but I haven't seen it come to the Common Council. And I asked our alderman in District 6, and he's unaware of this project too. And it seems like project commencement, that we have municipal code around that, and maybe it starts at the council and goes to committee, not from committee to the council. But anyway, it hasn't come to the council or to the alderperson. And so then I looked, well, where is this happening? And I looked in the DNR applications, and then I saw something that there was a wetland delineation report that was submitted just prior to this other proposal being submitted to the Economic Development Council. And this was on waste management land. And so again, I don't remember this ever coming up to council. Again, the alderperson didn't know about this. So I'm not understanding why we needed this study and where the approval was for it, for water land delineation. There's mention of maybe a park, but at that point, we're looking at a park, that bordered the Franklin Savannah. So I'm curious, like, what's happening on waste management land, and are these projects related? And how come our alderperson hasn't been notified? How come it hasn't come to the council? It seems like less transparency than our municipal code requires. So these are my questions and concerns. Thank you.
Well, let's be clear about one thing first. All the aldermen get all the agendas, and they're all welcome to attend all of the committee meetings without restrictions. Having said that, Mr. City Engineer.
Is it on? Okay. To explain totally unrelated issues, one, I'll answer your second question first regarding the wetland delineation on waste management property. There's some group of lands that at one time before the Savannah parcels came into play, we were considering making that a park. So we did a wetland delineation just to see what was down there and what was possible. To answer your first question, there is a Continental Divide that actually cuts off, if you can imagine, just on the west side of the Strauss parcel, and cuts off about 2 or 3 parcels down, I want to call it the northwest corner of Oakwood and 124th Street. So the concern, we did have some developers that came in and were looking to, I want to say, less than desirable properties down there. And to make it more desirable, we need to be able to supply water and sewer to make those a really nice project. So it went to the Economic Development Commission, several meetings, and finally we got a recommendation to go to Common Council to do a study. It is about $30,000 study. Process of budgets and so forth, we haven't really found the money to bring that forward, but we anticipate doing that someday. And if we can do that, then when that develops, it'll be a much nicer development than what was proposed.
Holy cow. Okay, Alderman Wilhelm.
Well, there's a municipal code about how to commence a project, so I want to make sure you know about that. But did you apply for diversion to the DNR?
We have not. That's what this project would have done.
So it's probably time to bring it to the council if it started off in June or whatever she said.
Just need $30,000 to find.
Well, I'm thinking you need approval before you can get 30,000.
Let's be clear, there's no project. It was an item that was talked about at a committee, and nothing happened from it. And when something happens, the first step will be the council because that's the appropriate process.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Seeing no one else rise, I will close the citizen comment period. With that, we move on to the regular approval minutes. The approval of the regular common council meeting minutes of December the 6th. Any additions or corrections? Barbara and Hope, for all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D is a hearing on a proposed ordinance to amend the comprehensive master plan to change future land use map designation for a property located 8301 West Old Loomis Road from commercial use in areas of natural resources to mixed use. This is an application by Wetland Treehouse LLC. This is a previously publicly noticed meeting, hearing. The purpose on the agenda is to accomplish the legally required opening of the public hearing. Madam Clerk, you have a notice to read. And we're going to open this, and if someone wants to speak, they're welcome to speak, and then we'll hold it open.
The public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Wisconsin State Statute 66.1001 sub 4 sub D. The public is invited to attend the public hearing and to provide input. A map showing the property affected, full legal description, the application, and all supporting materials are available for review and may be obtained from the City Council by the way of request of the Department of City Development at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin. The proposed ordinance to amend the City of Franklin during normal The proposed ordinance to amend the City of Franklin 2025 Comprehensive Master Plan is available and open for inspection by the public in the office of the clerk at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin, during normal business hours. Any questions or comments about the proposed amendment or to the Comprehensive Master Plan may be directed to Regulo Martinez Montalva, City of Franklin Principal Planner at 414-425-4024. Dated this 7th day of November 2022.
Okay, it appears we have a properly noticed public hearing. Regular, you want to give us the highlights, please? And then I'll open a public hearing and...
Regulo Martinez, Principal Planner. As you mentioned, Mayor, this item was published before the Plan Commission meeting when this item was tabled to the January 5th Plan Commission. So because the public comprehensive master plan amendments requires a notice 30 days before the meeting. So the action proposed is to table to the January 17th Common Council meeting, so then we can have the other meeting with the Plan Commission on January 5th. The information that is in the packet is the same information that was presented to the Plan Commission. So the applicant will make changes to the plans based on the recommendations from staff and the Plan Commission based on the input that was received during the public hearing at the Plan Commission. So basically, the recommendation was to change the proposal from the applicant is proposing from commercial and areas of natural resources to mixed use. That is the change that is being requested. What the staff is recommending is to keep the areas for natural resources and change the commercial area to mixed use. So that is one of the staff recommendation. The other recommendation is that the proposed site intensity measures that are proposed by the applicant are too high to what the UDOs allow. The proposed density is about 30 dwelling units per acre. And for new PDDs, the UDO establishes 8 dwelling units per acre. That is another recommendation. And the last one is that the applicant will need to provide cross access to the property adjacent to the southwest. So the applicant is making the revisions, and hopefully we will have this item again January 5th before the Plan Commission.
Okay, without objection, I'll take Mr. Pleva's comments as being had during this. Okay, City Attorney. Russ, do you want to come up and give us your comments again, please? But, folks, okay. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to ask Alderwoman Eichman her comment.
I just, for the record, wanted to state, or I guess ask Jesse, as I'm learning as I go, that we can have this public hearing after several of my constituents also requested a neighborhood meeting, which we still will be having prior to the next planning commission, to my understanding. I just wanted clarification for those here and for those listening at home.
As I've mentioned a couple of times, we'll hold this meeting open. We won't close it, we'll hold it open, and it'll be rescheduled, I think, for the 17th of January, in time for you to have your neighborhood meeting and get the neighbors' concerns, which is very important.
I appreciate the
But
clarification on that. Thank you.
according to the published document, we need to open the hearing. I don't know why I keep having to do this. If people are here to offer testimony, such as Mr. Pleva, we need to hear them, and we will hear them.
Understandable. I was under the impression that this was going to be held. I have several constituents that would have been here this evening as well, had they known.
It will be held, as I said
Okay.
just a
As
second
long as
ago,
it's
it'll be
okay.
held open until the January, I
Wanted
think,
complete
17th.
clarification on that. Thank you.
Sure. It was properly noticed, and it's also in the agenda item that we're going to do this. So, Mr. Pleva, once more, please.
I think my main point in the development, one of the questions I would have, I appreciate keeping the conservancy for the neighborhood that's adjacent to it to maybe be a buffer. But also, if you're approving, again, changing commercial, if it was zoned commercial for a length of time, that's been a long time, to change that. And again, that's been always, I think, an issue that I've always come to these meetings. We're rezoning things. We have a master plan, and then we change them, and we keep changing it. And it usually is the other way. Mine was executive housing to mixed use. That was an issue. This one is commercial to mixed use, and that doesn't make sense to me. We have some very high density intersections in this city that scream for retail, and this, plans that have come in the past don't get to me, the due or the incentives for large projects at very, what I'd say, commercial or retail corners. And I would say, if you're going to have a mixed-use development, taking out commercial, if you look at like Orchard, there's people that, we don't have many places to go to eat in Franklin. You're going to be taking out that strip mall that has, again, it's a little tired because of the Century property that never has been redeveloped. But you're going to be taking out retail to put in mixed use. And again, it's going against what this banner is over here. You're taking out that mixture and making it worse. And I would just say, if you're going to approve these things and change them to, again, have a higher component required for the 30% requirement, not the 70, because we're getting more and more housing. I think the only positive I see to adding more of these mixed use developments is you're going to get a density that a lot of national retailers are going to need to come in here to do developments. That's one thing to look at. Windmill Park is a negative because it takes out a lot of housing units and we have a lot of commercial. But I think with the density that's coming in, please, try and keep some of the retail and commercial areas that have been zoned forever. If you moved at a house there and you live next door and it's been that way for 30 years, that's to me fine. But changing it after the fact is an issue. So look at, as you are doing these projects, especially the Highway 100 in Loomis area, the 76th in Rawson, they're set up for commercial and retail, and taking that out or changing that just hurts that mix. That's my main point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pleva. Yes, ma'am. Good evening. And by the way, you're all invited to this neighborhood meeting, even though it's in Alderman Eichmann's district. I'm sure Alderman Nelson's going to get a hold of you.
Do you need my name and address? Linda De Arteaga, property owner of 8495 West Loomis Road. My concern is there's a traffic analysis impact study that DOT is looking over. And before any decisions are made, I think the public would be interested in seeing that and having that posted somewhere so that we could look at that before you move on.
You don't know what you're asking for, but okay.
Well-
I'm joking with you. It's a significant document, so, but yes, absolutely.
Well, okay, it is a significant document, but we can look for what we need to look for in
Absolutely.
there. Okay, thank you.
Merry Christmas. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'm not going to close this public hearing. It will be held open to the July 17th Common Council meeting.
Correction, January.
What did I say, July?
Your mind's on one.
Time flies, right? Let's get past the snowstorm before we get to July. January 17th. So with that, we'll move on to item G1, which is the action on this. At your place, you have a letter from Mike Zimmerman from Rock Ventures asking for this to be held over, which is appropriate. So let me read the motion. Is there a motion to table this? Let me read it formally. Motion to table this item to January 17th. I got that one right for a change. Common Council meeting. This is for, hold on one second, sorry. Or this is for the ordinance to amend the comprehensive master plan.
Second.
Nelson and Eichmann. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So January 17th for action on this item. Next item is consideration of extension of the John's disposal contract agreement. Madam Director of Administration.
Thanks, Mayor. In front of you in your packet on page 97, you have a council action sheet that really just has some information along with a lot of analysis and a presentation or a proposal from John's Disposal. John's Disposal has been contracting with the city for many years. They do a great job on our refuse and recycling collection, as well as customer service and assisting us with some of the administrative duties along with billing. The current agreement, which was amended in 2019 to add, I believe at that time, the weekly recycling, because it used to be biweekly, that contract is set to expire on December 31st, 2022. Unfortunately, with everything going on this year, in 2022, staff was not able to complete an RFP process. However, we have been working with representatives from John's to present multiple options to the council, and that's what you see in front of you on page 98. John's basically offered the community 3 options, one of them being a 5-year agreement, a 4% increase in year 1, and then CPI in the other 4 years, with CPI not increasing more than 6% in 2024 and 2025. I do want to note on option 3, the 1-year agreement, that 8% CPI increase, that's basically what our contract would be going up in 2023 if our contract wasn't over, because that's what our contract says. It's based on CPI. The CPI for the annual rate is estimated to come in right around 8%. And then they also gave us an option 2 as a 3-year agreement with a 6% rate in 2023, and then CPI not to exceed 6% in 2024 and 2025. So staff has been reviewing all of these options. It's a bit hard at this point. There's a lot going on with fuel, et cetera. And without an RFP process, it's just really hard to make this prediction. We did bring this item to the Finance Committee at their November meeting. They were presented all the information, discussed it in detail, and considered it fully. And any council members that are on that committee, feel free to please chime in. But basically, the committee understood that best practice would likely be to do an RFP process in 2023, which would point us to a 1-year agreement, that option 3. However, when we looked at that option 3 agreement, basically, it's approximately $62,000 higher than option 1. That's probably not so scary, because in an RFP process, you might be able to make that up. But the other piece of it, that fuel surcharge, is an additional $45,000. So the Finance Committee directed staff to do a couple of things. First of all, to ask John's to limit the CPI increase in year 3, year 25 to 6%, which John's said they would do. But then the second thing they directed us to do was to review the New Berlin and Greenfield contracts. They also use John's for the same services. There are some variations to the services, But in the end, recycling varies a little bit due to frequency of collection and then whether or not you get a recycling grant from the state. But if I just take refuse from community to community to community, Greenfield's contract, who started in 2021, they pay more than us, more than Franklin, and New Berlin contract started in 2022 pays less. Hypothetically, what that means is perhaps an RFP process could garner some more positive results, but of course that's unknown. But really, we have these three options, and in the end, the Finance Committee's recommendation was if indeed Johns was willing to limit that year 3 to 6%, and the contracts were comparable with Greenfield and New Berlin, that they thought it would be in the city's best interest to maybe take the bird in the hand, take the sure thing, and go for the 5-year. I know Alderman Holfer, you were very involved in this. I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Well,
Sorry.
I just had a couple of comments. I mentioned in the other meeting that I'd like to reward the good service that we've had, but that's different from paying a premium as well. I want to make sure that the rates we're getting are as competitive as can be. Questions I have, I guess if I look at the CPI, consumer price increases, from my standpoint, wages and fuel would be the only components in there that would really make any difference because the garbage cost isn't going up. The other thing is, those are really healthy sized fuel surcharges. And I'm assuming that if things came down, that would be the floor and not, that we wouldn't be going back and forth. So again, I'm just looking at how we can get the best deal for our residents and be very competitive with our neighboring communities. And I do know that New Berlin, size-wise and population-wise and stop-wise, they're really, it's really a good comparison, I think.
Alderman Wilhelm.
I've been here through quite a few contracts, and I've been here through bad service. And I know that the residents have really appreciated. They've been, as soon as they make a phone call, if something's missed, they're right out there. And for what little, you know, I'm not willing to give it up to save like $6 a year or something. I think Johns is the way to go. And I would make the motion to go with the option 1 for the 5-year contract.
Wait, because on the sheet, option 1 is a 1-year contract.
5-year extension.
Oh, wait, yep, I'm sorry. I just
And
wanna
with
make sure, 'cause
with the adjustment that was discussed.
I do have a suggested motion. Would that be okay if I read that?
All right, I'm willing to entertain it.
Approve an X-year agreement under the option X to continue with John's Disposal Services for refuse and recycling and to direct the appropriate staff to complete the contract documents on the same. So you said, so that would be approve a 5-year agreement under option 1 to continue with John's Disposal Services for refuse and recycling and to direct the appropriate staff to prepare the contract documents for the same.
That was pretty much my motion, except for the preparing the documents, yeah. Okay.
Second by Alderman Barber. Yep. Alderman Nelson first and then the city attorney.
Thank you. Well, to start off with, a little back noise here. To start off with is you get what you pay for. And I brought this up today earlier with a meeting we were at with exceptional service and hearing very, very few complaints from citizens. And when there is an issue, it's dealt with immediate. And that's a great testament to you and the staff that you have. And of those of us sitting up here, the last thing we want to hear is what's been missed and what's not been picked up and blah, 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 blah. So I think, and I echo Alderman Holfer's concern, is we all want the best deal for the citizens of the city. And I think Ms. Steno brought forth a pretty good motion to that. And I think what really caught me was that no increase in the fuel surcharge, which who knows where that's going to go. And I think as long as we've got And I'm more of a fan of the 5-year deal, and to push that out to make sure that we have those protections in for our citizens, that we're not going to get surcharged. And if we're close to New Berlin, great. We got a better deal than Greenfield, even better. And like Alderman Wilhelm said, for a few dollars, I want to make sure that we've got a longer contract and that we're secure for the future. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, you,
Does that motion anticipate the contract returning to the council for approval, or is it also an approval as drafted by staff for execution by the mayor and appropriate officers?
Alderman Wilhelm, making a motion.
Well, I'm asking administrator.
Right.
Contract from 2019 was never executed, so we need to put together the contract. But if council directs what the terms are, staff can certainly put that together, or we can bring it back, council's leisure.
I think the terms are kind of spelled out right here, aren't they?
Exactly.
So as long as the contract is exactly what's spelled out here and discussed, then I'm fine with go ahead and sign the contract.
Okay,
I know where last contract ended up. It was relative to the condominium question. And reminders on those.
you're in agreement, Alderman Barber? Okay, all right. All right, anybody else on the motion? Let's do a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Hopfer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Eichman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
And Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. Motion carries. With that, we move on to G3, which is a concept review for a land division and light industrial flex space development, approximately 27th Street and approximately Elm Road. What is with me today? Mark Norland from Likewise Partners is the applicant. Mr. Regetz? You're on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, Likewise Partners is going to be going over a light industrial flex space development concept that they've submitted for your review. I guess we can bring up Steve Buss and Mark Nordland, and I can find another chair. Thank you, Glenn. Do I need to push this? Or am I good? Okay. Associate Planner Marion X has submitted comments from the staff's review, and we make no recommendations or decisions tonight, but some comment highlights include that the proposed project is in the gateway area of Corporate Park, which is in Planned Development District 39, which along with the South 27th Street Overlay District are the development standards for the potential site. And the gateway area facilitates high-quality office, light industrial, and commercial mixed-use projects, and it discourages industrial uses and requires a special use approval for light industrial flex space, overnight truck parking, or other accessory uses. The proposed architecture in truck parking suggests that some of these uses are planned for the facility, and so some of the architectural desires might be that more glazing and office design standards would be desirable to support the primary intended uses of the gateway area. And the site is highly visible from Interstate 94 and 27th Street. And the proposed concept would require quite a bit of landscaping for screening and for aesthetics. And also, street alignment is not, it's still preliminary. It isn't, finally decided or designed, and more study will be needed for that, for what comes forward. But any design should provide significant protection for the Root River segment of the primary environmental corridor. And so with that, I turn it over to Mr. Nordland and Mr. Buss.
Before we do that, let me do one thing first. who's driving the screen? Can you go to the last slide? Yep, that one there. I just want to orient everybody as to what we're talking about. This is County Line Road, South County Line Road is the proper term. Essentially, this is where Hickory would be extended. Hickory ends up here. So Hickory would come down here. We talked about the Biller property earlier, is right here. This is Elm Road, is up above here. So this is the almost the low spot of the old Golf Dome, and these are up on the hill. And then there's Schmidt Ready Mix, trucking company here, and an amenity here. So that gives you the orientation. This is roughly the gateway area, always been designed for higher end uses, more corporate office park kind of uses. And what I just described to you, I've described to the applicants on a couple of occasions, so you're not getting blindsided. So with that, Mark?
Well, I think I'll just start with a little history of our involvement. So I'm Steve Buss with Likewise Partners. We spent about, I think, 18 months in discussions with the landowners and planning and engineering staff at the city, and even some WSDOT discussions. And really, our engineering and civil engineering and architecture team worked on the HSA development, so there's some history with the city in terms of working through the overlay district. We're investors in Franklin. We bought a building last March in the Franklin Business Park. So really the idea here is to bring a first-class project to the city that's consistent with the overlay district and the gateway district, and also works in the context of the marketplace. So this was a tool that the mayor described that was available to us that we wanted to take advantage of to show you what our thoughts are that were informed by what was on paper for the district itself. So we're working hard to be consistent with that and look forward to feedback tonight.
Yeah, maybe I can walk through what we're showing. Actually, if you do want to go back down to the site plan, that's a pretty good. I'm sorry, Mark Nordland with Likewise Partners in Minneapolis. So it's about 96 total acres that's owned by the current owners, and about 20 acres in the upper left-hand corner there you see is proposed to be a conservation area. It's a wooded area that we would leave undeveloped. And then that leaves really 4 lots for total development on the site. The first 2 in the upper right-hand corner are what we're primarily looking for feedback right now, but our agreement with the landowners would allow us to continue development so long as we could keep a decent cadence going as we develop these projects. Each of those, the top building is on about a 23-acre site, and the building 2 is on 19.5 acres. The entire development will be about $100 million in total project value. We've had some back and forth with the mayor and with Alderman Hanneman, as well as planning staff here about use and what works. And they've got a really complex zoning code here with overlays and so forth in them. And in the staff report that just came out, it confirmed that the use that we're proposing in the gateway area is allowed to have an office light industrial flex space use. So each of the tenants in the buildings would have office as part of their spaces. Each building would have either up to 4 tenants, but ideally you get single tenant users. But the buildings would be built on a speculative basis, so we would not know the users when we went ahead with the construction to start. They would have office space generally in the front of the space, and then the rear of the space would be manufacturing or R&D or tech or warehouse or storage, all of which are allowable uses in the gateway area with a special use. We've got, we understand completely that truck terminals are not allowed in this area. This is not a truck terminal at all. It's Class A industrial project and is remarkably different from a truck terminal. We would initially build 1 loading dock per 10,000 square feet with the initial spec buildings. They're similar buildings to what HSA and Vanguard have built, but we have added some additional design elements as well, trying to address what we've seen be approved in this zoning district. Saputo is in the same zoning gateway district as this. It's within 1,000 feet of 27th Street. So looked at that as an example of it, in addition to what HSA and Vanguard have done. With that, I think what we'd like to get from you is feedback and comments on what we're looking to do. We plan to prepare a formal application, but wanted this first so we could get the right direction. So hopefully we come forward with something that will work.
Mark, Peggy, can you go up 2 slides? 3 slides. There you go. That looks like a lot of truck. This is the same conversation we've had a number of times. That looks like a lot of truck docks to me.
Yeah, so this is showing all the potential truck positions where they could be. What you typically do and what we would do is we would build one per 10,000 square feet. So there'd be on a 300,000 foot building, you'd put 30 docks in, 30 dock positions in, but you'd have the ability to move them around as tenants came in, depending on where their shipping and receiving wanted to be.
Well, this site is very visible from I-94. I had always hoped that this was where the IKEA was going to go, or something that maybe kind of would highlight the corner of the city there. So I guess I'm less excited about a couple big boxes sitting there, you can see from there. You know, basically it's a showcase site. It should be for entering Franklin. And I see a parking lot with landscaping and screening pretty much instead of that showcase site. So I don't know if there's any way you could keep that up a little bit, make it look better. And also I notice it says that there would be a waiver on standards, and there's no identified tenant, and the light industrial would require a special use. We just went through a really difficult time with a special use. And I'm a little reluctant to not know what the tenants is with a special use moving forward. So I would hope you could try to pin that down a little better. And overnight parking also would require special use. Probably not a real big deal to have overnight parking here based on how far away it is, depending on, you know, if you can't see all that parking from, you know, as you're entering. So that would be depending on how you can do the buildings. I would like to see a sewer PAC opinion on the impacts to the PEC and SEC, which are the primary and secondary corridors. I think that sewer PAC should weigh in. It shouldn't just be the Environmental Commission with the Natural Resource Special Exception process. I would like to see some real professionals look at that as far as what we agreed to when we put in the Ryan Creek Interceptor and what we said we would protect in that process. It's not probably the worst building that I've seen, but is there any way you can give us something with awe as we're entering Franklin?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we were hoping to accomplish tonight is awe is hard to define in our seats, but if there's specific design elements or changes that you'd like to see, we'll consider them. But it's a challenge to do awe. If we can translate awe into specifics, we're happy to consider them. Is there
All
some?
office building instead of flat, big box lawn, eating up land, make use of some space going up, something that looks great.
Yeah,
One of the challenges is just the market, right? We've all seen how people live their lives, and it's evolved quite a bit. I heard some comments earlier about wanting more retail space and things like that, and you know, retail has changed remarkably in the last 10 years, right? The way that we receive our goods and services is completely different than it was 10 years ago, and the way that people are working has changed considerably.
Medical facility, maybe?
So suburban office complexes just aren't being constructed generally nationally. You've got a beautiful campus up at Northwestern Mutual. You know, the mayor mentioned that several times when we met, that's what they would like to see here. And I know that was expanded, I think, in 2014. And I think the zoning went into place in 2016, and when there was still, you know, more of that happening in the world. In today's world, that it just doesn't, those uses just aren't out there. And so we think that this is a good feasible use for the site that really can be a good, tax base for the city and can provide jobs for the city. Additionally, there's some challenges in this particular neighborhood because it's an evolving area, right? There's still a concrete plant. There's a gentleman's club that are both immediately adjacent to this, which are barriers for bringing in some of those uses, even if they are available out in the marketplace today. So another thing that we've looked at as we've done that, trying to compare this Class A industrial to office, looking at the Northwestern Mutual campus as an example, their current assessed market value is about $80 million, and it's on an 84-acre site. So it's just about $1 million an acre of assessed market value on that 1 million square foot complex up there. And we will easily achieve that kind of evaluation buildings like this per acre. So that really, if you've watched the markets, the values have flipped. Industrial and multifamily are the two highest valued real estate classes. Retail is struggling. Certain types of retail are struggling right now, and certainly office space is definitely struggling.
Seems like medical's going up though. So.
Medical's good. You've got a beautiful hospital campus, but to get the scale for this kind of a project, I mean, there's 100 acres here. You can do a 10,000 square foot clinic someplace or whatever, and that might use an acre or an acre and a half. But to get that kind of a scale, you've already got that, and it's just up the street, and it's a beautiful facility. I just don't know that there's more demand for that in this location.
You missed Freighter, had that up there.
Alderman, excuse me, I'm going to jump in for 1 second because I'm going to make sure the record's clear. I never have once said this is an office area. It's not. I've never said that. The conversation we had about Northwestern Mutual was an illustration of the patience of the city. And you'll recall I talked about a baseball diamond and several car dealerships being proposed that ultimately didn't get approved, and ultimately we got Northwestern Mutual. Similarly, I mentioned to you the Ascension facility to illustrate the patience of the city. And I discussed with you the U.S. Postal Service distribution facility as well as the truck terminal. Neither of them are there. Ascension's there. So nobody make the misconception and Facebook post that I said this is an office site or a retail site, because it's not a retail site. So
yeah, I didn't mean to mischaracterize our conversation. I guess I took your examples as being that you wanted something other than industrial, and if it's not industrial, it's office or retail, unless you do housing here, which hasn't ever been proposed. So that's where I took that.
Well, I understand the need to want to get the tax base and get that going. I do agree with the mayor about sometimes waiting does bring us something better. I guess I'm just, is this a one story that looks like a two story?
No, well, we can accommodate 2 stories of office in the building. So one of the things we talked about is we've got glass on 2 stories, but that could be expanded. One of the construction techniques we can use is to do knockouts. So we can add glass on the second floor, depending on how that office lays out with the different users. The other thing I point out that we didn't mention is the site grade really set up to have the office on the first building we're proposing facing north, but it really didn't meet the spirit, I think, of the Gateway
Right.
District. So it's more expensive to do, but we reoriented the north building to have the glass line face the south, which is the more prominent visible area. So, I mean, we've been working from a design standpoint to work with the spirit of the Gateway. This is an industrial project that is consistent with the uses, but we appreciate that it needs to be a better aesthetic and have more glass and
Yeah, especially that
brick
one
and
building.
accents.
The first one that's closer to the view, that's pretty important for
Yep.
Franklin. We want to start off with a good light there. But, I guess I don't have any real strong objections other than I could hope for something better. Do you know what type of industrial users you're talking about? Any ideas?
Yeah, so we've so it's kind of the chicken and the egg in the marketplace for us. The industrial and office warehouse, office industrial users, they move very quickly, and so most of the leases that are getting done in the Milwaukee market overall are in speculative buildings where someone's making a decision very quickly, or they pick up a contract, or they decide they need to grow, and it happens, and they don't want to necessarily go through sort of the full development timeframe because the business is moving faster than that. So, for Mark and I, we take some risk in not having tenants, but what it gives the community is the ability to bring in someone who needs to move fast, who's expanding quickly, and wants a place for their business to grow.
Couple examples in the last 2 years?
I'd say, just as an example, we talked about this. We're finishing up a building in Caledonia right now. It's a 190,000 square foot light industrial building in the DeBack Farms project. And about half of those prospective users that we've seen are more manufacturing or tech in orientation. Some are more traditional office warehouse, but I'd say a good half of the tenant mix has been manufacturers looking to expand and relocate, come north from Kenosha or come from the city of Milwaukee south. So we think that's going to be a big part of it that we don't see in other markets in terms of share demand.
Okay, I'm gonna yield the floor.
You know what I didn't do? I didn't do my concept review speech. So what you're going to get this evening is a review of your proposal by the Common Council. There will be no votes taken. It's merely a personal preference, opinions by the Common Council members to help you guide you in your anticipated formal filings. But please do not take anything as a decision by the Common Council. Alderman Barber.
I'm just want to comment on the aesthetics too, given the visibility there. I would think that color and lighting and landscaping would go a long way to accommodate. Look what Northwestern has done with their building, and it's lit up at night. It has the appearance of being something dynamic, and the landscape, I'm not sure you can match that. But lighting, landscaping, and color would pop the area to make it that it is something.
Thank you.
That's my comment.
I'm waiting for another Alderman Holford, but in the meantime, Ed, I see your light. My other concern that I think I expressed to you guys, and maybe I didn't, but was that the two buildings possibly proposed occupy the high and visible, but we don't know what's going to go on the lesser site. And a master site plan would be very helpful for us. This is why I keep telling you, we're looking for a consolidated corporate campus thing. And you're going to say, not out there, and I'm going to tell you they're out there. Alderman Hofer.
Thanks. Yeah, the hard part for me is just going down 27th Street and seeing the sides of two buildings. It looks like a 40-foot setback, is that correct, from 27th Street? On that last page?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure of the setback. We've respected whatever the setback is there on that page, but.
And then whatever the width of the roadway is there to get the backside, doesn't leave a whole lot for any kind of, expansive greenery other than, and I see it says drainage swale in there, which is going to limit some of that as well. So I don't know if there's any way to massage the location of the buildings a little bit to, we can make sure there's enough screening and.
Yeah, if you want to, can you go to the rendering sheet that's just the rendering? No, it's probably your first page. I'm sorry. That one right there. So we've tried to treat the three sides of the building the same, so that they're all like they're all the front of the building, if you will. So if you look at that, on the right-hand side of what's on the screen right now, that is the frontage along 27th Street. So there are windows that go all the way along that. We could look to dress that up even further. There's brick inlay in there. There's relief in the elevation, both that the elevation comes forward and backwards, but also at the roof line where it goes up and down, so that it's not just one flat plane. We hired Partners in Design to do the architecture on this, and they've done other projects in this overlay district. And part of the reason why we brought them on board is because they had just done that and gone through this process with you. And so we tried to incorporate as much from what we've learned from Saputo, which is in the Gateway District, and then as well as the HSA and Vanguard buildings, which aren't in Gateway, but are also in this same overall district. But we can look at that at 27th and try to figure out between landscaping, lighting, but also potentially some additional features on those frontages of the buildings.
And given the market, you're optimistic that you'll start filling it up fairly soon, or?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the good news about the light industrial market is the demand has been there with the changes in e-commerce growth and just driving the need for it. The manufacturing health in this part of Wisconsin, it's really been a bright spot. And that's one of the real, I've mentioned it before, but that's a real differentiator, I think, in terms of demand here. So that has held steady the last 6 months, while other uses have seen a decline in demand. Mark talked about office, but with work from home being significant and with sort of maybe a recession coming on, that office demand has really changed. Well, we hope not, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
we're all rooting for it not to be a recession, but and one of the the supply chain issues that we've been going through for the last several years, one of the bright spots of that is that people are bringing more manufacturing back into the United States and into markets like Milwaukee, where you've got a great workforce, and they're filling buildings like this. The vacancy rate on this type of buildings in the Milwaukee metro area is 2.5% probably right now, and just 5 or 6% is normally kind of an equilibrium type vacancy rate. So it's
What do you think the smallest tenant size might be?
about 50,000 square feet. Yeah, both buildings that we're showing are 300,000 square feet. The ideal case is you have one tenant that takes the entire building. That's good for everybody. But multi-tenants aren't bad either, because they allow tenants to grow. And ideally here, if we, if we end up with about 1 million square feet total on this, this site, over time, you can have some smaller tenants that end up as a maybe a lead tenant for the next building and take a bigger space there, and they can keep growing within as well. I know that your industrial park, we own a building there, and it's very full, right? And those tenants don't have any place to grow. There's some new buildings that obviously just came up. One of them it has a lease out on the whole building right now, and it's good. Things are moving along, and it's bringing again tax base and jobs, which I think are two real goals of most cities.
Thank you.
I just want to add, I do like the overall concept and idea of this. However, I do feel that the building itself is definitely lacking some architectural detail. So I think there could be some improvements you mentioned upon that, as well as definitely the landscaping would need to be changed. But overall, I think it's a great concept and idea.
Do you have any specifics on the architecture or things that
Well, could you-
jump out at you?
My background is actually in design,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm going to be a little bit more particular than some of the other council members. But adding more glass, more windows, and so forth. I understand manufacturing will be going on in some of the facility, but I think that would add a lot. Possibly the bump outs that you spoke of. It's just such little light inside the building, and from the outside, I just feel it's too much brick. It just needs a little bit more of architectural feel to it, with some of the other buildings and facilities that we have right in that area. I don't know if you want to get another opinion from another architecture firm, but I definitely think you could do better on that. More windows, more light, I think would go a long way.
Okay.
It's just my 2 cents. I could probably go on, but leave it at that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I just want to relay some of the other conversations we had. I mentioned to both Mark and Steve, this was on Gersopolis or MLG or Biller, I'd be jumping up and down. This is different than Saputo. Saputo's not visible from the highway. This one is. That's why we're acting the way we're acting. So just so you know. Anyone else? Okay. John?
Quick question. One of the other, a couple of the other uses that we haven't mentioned tonight are, tech's been mentioned, as well as research and development. You seeing any movement in those markets that could be possible tenants of this type of facility, whether it's here or at the other sites the mayor mentioned?
Almost certainly, there'll be a mix of tenants, there'll be. And, no, but the truth is, when you build these buildings on a speculative basis and they're set up to be potentially multi-tenanted, and if you end up with, again, 1 million square feet between 3 or 4 buildings on these sites, you'll have somebody might be doing clean room in the back and manufacturing medical devices, right? And somebody else might be, storing product that's manufactured someplace else. It will be a mix of things. All of them will have office. It's a requirement of your zoning that everybody has office. They can't just have a straight distribution facility that doesn't have any office in it. But what, one of the interesting things working in industrial buildings is that each tenant can be completely different. When you do office, it's sort of variations of the same. In industrial, it's you get a lot of different types of tenants.
I think just on the tech side, we've toured a number of manufacturing facilities in Franklin and in the business park in particular. And, the manufacturing today is very intensive. There's a lot of investment in equipment, there's a lot of people working there as well, but there's a lot of robotics. So it's a different type of manufacturing. And I think the line between tech and manufacturing, it's like hard to say, but everything that's, here and that we see in the community is there's a lot of investment going on in space.
Great. Thank you. Hope you got some information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
I
it.
hope I didn't treat you with disrespect. I don't intend to do that. I'm an open book, right?
No, the feedback is great because we'll put, this thought into the next application that'll be in front of you hopefully before too long.
Thanks, guys. Merry
Thank you.
Christmas. Happy New Year. Move on to G4, which is a request from Kevin Schleter to spend more money, but you can't trailer things with a trailer that's split in half. It's a request to move forward with the Towmaster trailer, and he has found money in his budget. All right, now what do I do? I'm going to do Nelson and Barber. Sorry, you'll get the next one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Go forth and plow. Is the ice rink frozen yet? Good. Thanks, Kevin. Good luck the next couple of days. G5 is authorization to solicit equipment considered in the 23 capital outlay for DPW, and this is to essentially pre-order long-term items.
So move.
Barber and Eichmann, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Don't deliver anything in the next 2 weeks. G6 is the results of a sale of surplus equipment, $51,977.25. Is there a motion to do nothing? Sure, Alderman Hofer.
Was in such a hurry to pass the last thing, I didn't get a chance to get a question in there. We just made $51,977 from our auction, and in the previous G4, it was requested or suggested that they use money that's unused from this year's budget for pavement marking and potentially put pavement marking off another year in some areas. I would like to see if there's other opportunities to fund that $25,000 so that we don't have to postpone any additional road marking in the future. I drive down Forest Hill almost every day, and the brand new marking is looking pretty terrible already. And we've received multiple calls this summer for places where the pavement, and I understand it's a problem with the supply chain, but eventually that will clear up. And I just want to make sure that we're catching up and maintaining the schedule that we're supposed to schedule. So I would rather not use that money there.
Sure. And Kevin can correct me since he's here, but yeah, this past year was especially difficult trying to just even buy paint and get a contractor out to paint markings. So this G4 was from the 2022 budget that we weren't able to get done for that reason.
The next item is G7, an ordinance to amend 15-3.0442 of the Unified Development Ordinance, the Rock Sports Complex, to allow for a 3-story mixed-use office building we know as M1. That's Alderman Reichman's district.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Nelson. Discussion on motion? Alderman Nelson.
So I looked at what the staff comments are, and I'm not sure if there's going to be any sort of, I kind of like how they're looking at that lower apartment look, the same success as Velo's got, but there's nobody here from the group to give a comment on demand right now, because I think it's what, 78 or 79 apartment buildings to add? Apartment units? Units?
Yes, units, yes.
Okay. So, well, that was my only comment, that was my only concern, if that was a density issue or not, but I stand by my second.
Mr. Martin, at the previous Plan Commission meeting, mentioned that demand for apartments is still off the charts. So, I don't know if that helps you or not, but.
First floor
Alderman Nelson.
apartments.
Yes, it is, it's a crazy demand. I guess my concern was as things move forward in the future, is that demand going to stay? And apparently that's the trend. So those that were, making concerns about certain density, because I'm not an apartment person, but these higher end ones seem to be very, very successful. And we've seen that with Velo Village, so I yield.
Anybody else? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 5 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. G8, it's a resolution authorizing certain officials to enter into private property infiltration and inflow with MMSD for $50,240. Alderman Wilhelm.
I just want to make a correction, page 194, the resolution, the fourth whereas. It's going to clean up a typo and clarify that there isn't a cost to the property owner, which was a question from one of the property owners. So on the fourth whereas, it would read, whereas MMSC has developed an agreement where they will fund, and then change the word to the, fund the cost to invest these areas, and striking the words identify projects to, leaving fix any defects. Full reading, whereas MMC has developed an agreement where they will fund the cost to investigate these areas and fix any defects in the private system.
No,
That ain't going to work. Mr. City Engineer.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question right before the meeting. So this is only to do the identification. We can't fix it because we don't know what defects we're going to find.
Okay, so that was the second part when I talked to Tyler.
Right.
Said if it was, as I thought it could be based on the amount of money that it was only to fix, then you need another, whereas it says there'll be a phase 2, because what happens is on page 203, it talks about that the scope of the work will include the following elements, and then it says illegal or untended clear water source, so that kind of scary for the property owners. Then on 208, it talks about the intent is to conduct this investigative work following the rehabilitation and corrective action. So it sounds like we're going to find these problems and then we're going to come after you and fix them. So,
And that is the understanding. So this is what we call PPII, private property inflow infiltration. So if we find a defect on private property, we would use those funds to address those problems. We just don't know what they are yet.
you would use the funds, and that's what I'm saying. So in the whereas, if you could add a whereas, that says whereas once the
I got an easier
investigation.
fix, if I may.
Go ahead.
Can I offer it to you?
Yes,
Whereas MMSD has developed an agreement where they will fund the cost to investigate these areas and identify projects needing repair and discovering defects in private systems. But it doesn't, we don't want to talk about fixing them.
we don't want to, well, I think we want to mention something that gives the property owners some, so they don't have to worry that those other languages that they're going to come after them, because you have to say something about, you're going to identify them, but they're not responsible.
If you'll allow me some creative license to come up with something, I can make that intent happen.
Then I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution with corrections by the city engineer and the city attorney, which I don't like to do because I like to see what it has. And if you could just run that past me right before you do it, I can accept that.
So you remember that we have a program going now on PPII that identifies the problem and offers some reimbursement for the repair. So you got to be careful with the language.
Right? But then you might not get the property owner to sign on with that language, so,
But we can't go after them. There's nothing we can do.
okay.
But, fine, I'm okay. I just want to be clear that we already have a program that helps people with that. So we can't exclude that program. So do we have a second?
Second.
That was a clear question. Did we? We do now. Okay, moved and second, Mr. City Attorney.
Only that the resolution provides for execution by the mayor and city clerk, and the city clerk's name doesn't appear on page 200 on the contract, so.
We can change
That's
that.
a technical change.
Your motion is subject to technical corrections, right? Alderwoman? As usual, Alderwoman Eichman? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G9 is resolution to issue contract change order. Alderwoman Wilhelm. Hold on. Okay.
If this money or this motion does not include the particular addresses to here, but the document scope of work does, I hope. If you decide you're going to move the money, will you be coming back? If you decide you're going to do a different project instead of this one, let's say the property is going.
Yes, yeah, that would be another funding agreement.
Okay, you would come back to the council?
Yes.
And you wouldn't like just say, hey, well, I got the money and I'm going to ask MSC and shift it somewhere else?
If we need another $128,000 to fix whatever we find, that would come back here. It's another funding agreement.
I'm talking about this particular $50,000. If the property owners tomorrow say, forget it, we're done, and you've already got this going, and the MSC, well, they wouldn't agree with the money that quickly, but you've already got the money agreed to by MMSC, and it's $50,000, and then you find out the property owners don't want to do it, will you just accept the money, or will you be able?
No, I can only use it for what the intention was. And they, just so you know, they've both verbally been enthusiastic about taking this money. So.
Okay. G9, page 221. It's a that was voted on. Was it? Yes. A resolution issue contract change order number 1 to start pavement for the 2022 street improvement program for $88,680.34.
Motion to adopt the resolution for the change order for Stark pavement.
Wilhelm and Barber. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G10 on page 229 is a resolution authorizing certain officials enter into a private property infiltration inflow reduction agreement, funding agreement with Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage in the amount of $972,690. Alderman Wilhelm.
Because there's such a large amount of money, I would like the motion to contain the projects that are listed. So I don't know if it's in anyone's particular district that would rather make this, or they're kind of scattered around. But I would make the motion to adopt the resolution authorizing certain officials to enter private property infiltration inflow reduction agreement, funding agreement, M10005FR01 with Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District in the amount of $972,690, subject to technical corrections by legal and engineering staff. Why can't we just get them right the first time? After full MMSD review. That is backwards. I just realized that. Technical corrections by legal and engineering after MMSD's review and agreement?
So MMSD's legal staff is still reviewing this document.
Okay. And then I would like to add 4 projects, FR2005, FR2006, FR2012, only as depicted on the council action sheet for December 20th, G10.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. City Attorney?
Only that the same technical corrections with regard to the signature page would be included.
Listed technical corrections on this one.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G11, page 261, is a resolution to vacate Service Road, South 60th Street to 58th on the south side of West Ryan Road. Mr. City Engineer, and I will say I had a slight objection to this that's been answered by legal counsel. We got nothing to say about it.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Engineer.
I did receive a phone call today from a representative of the applicant. They're okay with if Alderwoman Hanneman will be here on the 3rd. They're okay with the 3rd if the city attorney was okay with the 3rd. If there's no reason to, can we do it that quickly, or we still need to wait till January 17? Okay, so if you can make the change in the motion from January 17 to January 3rd, the applicant would appreciate that.
Okay, the motion is to table to January 3rd, not the 17th.
Correct.
Is there such a motion? Barber and Hope, for all those in favor of the motion to table to January 3rd, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G12, page 263, is a resolution to amend 2019-7467, conditions and restrictions for special use for an over-the-road trucking company at 11141 West Forest Home Avenue. This will allow a right way to operate a bus service, a limited bus service, training facility, and recruitment area in what used to be a trucking company. Hofer and Eichmann. Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G13, page 277 is resolution authorizing certain officials to execute an agreement to continue professional environmental engineering services to monitor compliance at the Metro Recycling Facility with JSA Environmental. I will note that the insurance requirements are different than what our standard form are, and the council needs to know that as they go forward with approval.
So moved. Second.
Barber and Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We do need to talk about that as to next year if that agreement contains the same liability that we require in our standard form. This contractor is far less. Mr. City Attorney.
Only that with regard to the use by staff of the standard form when preparing items for the council, the bottom line has always been that insurance provisions are negotiable in terms of the amounts, et cetera. I don't know if that changed this year or something, but that's the way it's always been.
I'll accept that, but I don't know that I've ever negotiated down. We have an engineering firm that's not doing business with us because they couldn't meet our requirements. So, anyway.
No, the contracts were brought to the council by staff after staff negotiated them.
Okay, did we vote on this? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. If we did it, we'll do it again. All those, any opposed? Motion carries. G14 is the property and casualty insurance coverage for 2023. Madam Director.
Renewal that we do for all of our property and liability insurance. If you look on page 295, under the summary, you will see every line of coverage, every cost from 22 to 23, and who the carrier is. All of them are renewals, except for there is a new provider for the cyber insurance policy recommended, and that's Cowbell Cyber. All the same coverages as the Chubb one was this year. And actually, we've just recently found out that it's at a lower cost. So other than that, it's pretty much standard quo under the league's municipal insurance program.
Stino, I have a couple questions about the, getting the documents. Can you scan to review the policy? I don't usually buy a policy for myself unless I know what I'm covered under. But I felt the public official liability portion, based on everything that's been going on, would be very important for the council members to understand. When I asked about this about a year ago, I was told that actually liability was removed. And so.
What was removed?
The public official liability section was removed.
Who did you ask and who told you that?
I actually asked you directly. That's when I got these pages from the municipality, when I asked you for the insurance book to try.
Absolutely not. That was not the answer. Public officials coverage is part of our policy, and it's in the binder that I handed you in that conference room to read over.
And that's
so
what
no,
I
it's
thought.
not gone.
Okay, so, given that, we should all know what those are. And if you could provide that policy for us. And I understand it's probably a large document, but if you scan it electronically and email it to us, then we all can review it, and we can read 10 pages, or we can read a sentence, or we can read the entire 400 pages, whatever it is. But it would be nice to have kind of a breakdown on what that coverage is. So we've had a couple of questions on that lately. Unless you can give us a little bit one here for starters, that would be good.
Alderman Barber.
I guess I don't need all that detail. I mean, you could get a book like this coming out of the policies.
Alderman Barber has the floor.
So my concern is if we could be specific about what sections maybe would help. I like the officer's liability. That one, then maybe the property insurance kind of stuff, just as just a brief overview, maybe a couple of paragraphs that would be highlighted from each section. I don't want to have to go through a document that has all these coverages, because I do this kind of coverage work for some other organizations, and it's extensive.
Let's try this. You have a document from LWMMI, correct?
A binder.
So that binder will be available to the common council members to review in the council.
It's in my assistant's office, and it's available for review at all times.
I don't want to take the time to have somebody scan a document that nobody will read, or only one or two people will read. Let's be efficient, okay?
I'm also more than
Documents
happy
available.
to have the insurance provider, LWMI, come in and give the council a preview of all the insurance coverages. And
That would be awesome.
you all saw a video already on it last year, but it's a really good reminder to do
That would be
every so
helpful in my
often.
estimation.
Best idea.
Is there a motion on the matter?
Motion to authorize the Director of Administration.
Second.
Barber and Holfer. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. For the record, the total annual premium, $735,266 total. G15 is closed session, G16 is closed session. Move on to item H, which is licenses. Alderman Eichman. I picked you because you were reaching for papers. Alderwoman Willem. Wait a minute.
So we have the, gosh. License applications were reviewed, and we have the operator new, Lindsay Tingle. This is not the right one. No, it's this one. That was last time's. Okay. Lindsay Tinzel was approved. Nicole Baker approved. Amanda Becker approved. Simran Singh approved. Walgreens Company, that was a change of agent, approved. EW Post That was a public grant approved. And the fireworks display process, there was discussion took place on adding an address line and considering changing the attorney general wording to state law and carrying the item to the next meeting. For the review and discussion of the extraordinary events and previous citizen input from 11:10, we will continue this to the next agenda, holding for a full membership of the License Committee.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Eichman. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Wilhelm.
Oh, the minutes? All the minutes were approved.
Okay, move on to item I, vouchers. Is there a motion approval, city vouchers with an ending date of December 15th, amount of $3,251,490.66, and property tax disbursements with an ending date of December 15th, the amount of $54.63, and payroll dated December 16th, in the amount of $464,542.63, and payments to the various payroll deductions in the amount of $295,585.14 plus city matching payments. An estimated payroll for December 30th, estimated $442,000, payments to the various payroll deductions, estimated $440,000, and city matching payments. And approval of release of library vouchers not to exceed $25,000, and approval of release payment of to Parking Lot Maintenance LLC in the amount of $70,105.30.
Second.
Madam Clerk. Yeah, you got it.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Eichman.
Aye.
And Alderman Hopper.
Aye.
Motion carries, 5 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. Let's do this way. We move to G15, which is confirmation of an appointment of Anthony Savoy as Director of Inspection Services. There's an opportunity to go to closed session. Any interest in that?
No.
Tony, why don't you come on up? Let me at least introduce you and offer the council an opportunity. Come on, sit down.
Open. We like open.
Some of you may recognize Tony, maybe you don't. Tony was our Assistant Chief Building Inspector. I'm going to give you that title. Just take it. And he left us in 2015 to go to Oak Creek for retirement benefits, essentially. I'm speaking for you. But Tony was an ace in the department back then. I was very pleased that he chose to reapply for the boss's job, and I speak very highly of him because he deserves it. Questions for Tony? Alderman Nelson.
Good evening, sir. Welcome back. So, a question. What do you believe, and I have a few of these, what do you believe is going to be your biggest challenge when you start this new position? Well, I mean, I understand there's a lot of, but I mean, right away, I mean, what do you think is your biggest issue?
Biggest challenge right now has always been in the inspection field is consistency. I'm not sure if I see it as a biggest challenge, but a consistent challenge. And seeing where the staff is at, making sure that at least in our corner of the universe here, that we all are everything the same as far as of consistency and enforcement. That way, developers coming in know what to expect, plan ahead, and there's no surprise. Staffing is going to be a challenge. Never did fill a vacancy in Oak. We had to rearrange how we did things with it. Just the demographics are not there. So you're either looking at starting with younger, inexperienced, and having to mentor and develop, or go with it. So that's going to be a consistent challenge probably for.
I'll yield for now and I'll come back.
Anybody? Alderman Barber.
Are one of the considerations that you're coming in with, developing good customer service delivery?
Absolutely. I mean, going way back when I started this, I fire service and fire prevention bureau, and you were essentially the face of the department who the public saw, unless they had an emergency, and then they didn't care what you looked like or what you did. They were in an emergency situation. So aside from that, you were the face of the department, and I guess I always felt like I did this on the DOT, but I didn't want people to feel like they were coming to the DOT. And I would certainly try to foster that.
Because I would appreciate no complaints. Thank you.
I'm going to answer that one. Tony, for as long as we've known each other, is always my go-to in the building inspection department because, believe me, I got the complaints back then. Fortunately, Scott's been great. I expect Tony will continue that and maybe even improve on it. So, anybody else? Alderman Nelson, you want to go back? Anybody else?
To the west side.
Alderman Holfer?
I would just say, I hope that you continue to have open dialogue with contractors. There's nothing worse than getting an inspection failed and having an inspector say, figure it out.
We struggle with that at Oak Creek sometimes because of the volume of work. I always felt I'd rather take an extra 5 minutes and try to communicate what's happening out there as opposed to feeling 4 calls later, plus the frustration I go. So, especially in a commercial line, which is primarily what it's enforcement and education. If we can educate contractor designers to changes, new code language, chronic problems, makes all our lives easier. That is absolutely. It is really an educational process as much as an enforcement process.
Yeah, I've been on the other side of that equation, and I think we've come a long way since the olden times, but I want to make sure we keep moving in the positive direction. Thank you.
No, absolutely.
Do you want to be called Tony?
Yes.
When we call you up? Okay. So how did your interactions go with your elected officials, and how do you see that working here?
Well, I think Mayor Olson could speak to that. Back when we were having some difficult times in the inspection department, I always felt that, first off, being upfront, being straight. I think sometimes maybe you didn't exactly like my answer, but you've come to find out it was accurate and what I told you happened. So that's the big open dialogue, and don't make promises you can't keep, and explain anything that seems to unclear or avoid misunderstandings before they start. Solves a lot of issues down the line. So I feel I've done a pretty good job of developing a good relationship with officials, the contractors,
I guess what I was talking about,
designers.
when I get a constituent that demands, I call up and say, I'm trying to get this fence permit and they're doing this, and I call them. Usually the story isn't quite what they tell me, but a lot of times that you're working with constituents trying to do things, and so I'm wondering how that interaction works with helping the alderman work with the constituent.
Accurate information. Get them accurate information so they go back to their constituent and explain in a very concise, accurate manner where the project's at, where whatever the issue's at. Good, accurate information. Promises that, like I say, that happen. Just accurate information on what's happening.
Sounds good.
And sometimes the why is a little more involved because it's a wonky, technical process sometimes. So conveying that information, so you can convey that now to the constituent. really what needs to happen.
Right.
When it
Okay.
doesn't happen, it's bad. It's not that difficult. It just needs to be done on a consistent basis.
Thank you.
Alderman Barber, then Alderman.
A follow-up to that is sometimes we get involved after things have been resolved and the constituents aren't happy. If you can sense that there's going to be that, would you get the alderman involved prior to a decision so that it can be looked at from another set of eyes or with the set of eyes with the constituent? Just recently, I've had a situation where someone came out and threatened, at least that's what I was being told. And I don't like to come into that kind of an adversarial kind of thing. If we could get the heads up ahead of time and be at least enlightened with some kind of thought about what is going on, if it's going to be problematic, I would appreciate that.
No, I can envision a couple scenarios. I couldn't come up with particulars, but I'm sure Alderman Olson, I had contacted you and when I was thrown into situations that I knew were going to be problematic, lack of a better term, and give you at least a heads up. And I think you're asking for it. You get a heads up if we know something's going to be problematic, high profile, or there are going to be some high-end decisions that are unpopular, or I like to give everybody a little heads up. I designers, I try to track, and certainly something that has a political component or may have, certainly the public official. Heads up, always good. Nobody wants to get blindsided.
I'd appreciate that, personally.
I don't like one of the words you use, so can you meet with Peggy and I after the meeting? That doesn't make me happy to hear that someone, whether it's a perception or reality, I don't need that word floating around. You talk about it after.
Not sure what
You just told us that you had a constituent say they were threatened, implying that a building inspector threatened somebody.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't want to be brought into it at the tail end of something.
Oh, you want a heads up on any issue, potential issues? Got it, okay. All right, so let's everybody on YouTube and Facebook understand, nobody was threatened.
No.
That was, because I get concerned, because I've never heard that, Peggy. I've never heard any complaints, and so that raised my attention. Alderman Nelson.
Just my one last quick point is you're well aware that we've got so much going on. I mean, we are booming. And I just know that sense of urgency from everyone wants to know something right now. And just to echo Alderman Barber, just please, if there is something that's going on, the communication back and forth is great. When they call us and they hammer on us for certain things, I prefer to have a go-to and just say, this is because I don't want to play that in-between game. Because when I find out something, I go back and they've got another question. That's the worst thing in the world, in my opinion. It's the most inefficient way to do things. You're a department head. I'll be sending things your way and expect that they get done, whether they don't like the answer because it's not within the legal realm, or they're satisfied. But I don't like to do the in-between. Thank you for your time. Welcome.
Okay, anybody else? And we need a motion to confirm the appointment of Mr. Savoy as our next building inspector. Well, let's use the correct title. Director of Building Service, Inspection Services. So that's been moved by Alderman Barber. Is there a second by Alderman Eichman? Madam Clerk, let's do a roll call.
Aye.
Over. Alderwoman Eichman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
And Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. The motion carries. Welcome, Tony. We'll see you at the beginning of the year, right?
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Happy to have you, as you know. Thanks, Tony. See you later. Merry Christmas.
Christmas, everybody.
Okay, with that, we move to G16. Let's not have a repeat of last meeting. I'm looking for the Common Council to authorize the people they wish to come into closed session, but no automatics. Other than me, no automatics. So who does the council want?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Let's,
5 to 7.
let's do 8:30.
Recording stopped.
I worked in South Milwaukee, yes. 3.5 years.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we said 8:30, it's 8:33. Are we back? Are we streaming and recording? We're back in open session according to the code. The rule, excuse me. Thank you very much. The mayor determines who is appropriate for closed session. For one of these items, Mr. Pelkey is asked to address the council as the complainant. I'm going to ask the Director of Administration to attend and myself. So with that, is there a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 19.85 sub 1 sub F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories and disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of the specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any persons referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, and to re-enter open session at the same place thereafter, to act upon such matters as discussed therein as it deems appropriate. Hopefer and Barber, Mr. City Administrator. Before we entertain that motion, we need a confirming motion by the Common Council on the attendees. Can you withdraw, Ed, please? Alderman Barber? Say yes. Okay, I need a confirming motion of attendance by the Director of Administration, myself, and Mr. Pelkey in various portions of the closed session.
Read back the motion.
Motion is to have the Director of Administration, myself, and Mr. Pelkey in the closed session.
I'd like to have. I was absent.
It's required per the rules in terms of attendance. However, complainant has, under the code, a right to present. So the thought was to do that in closed session pursuant to the code, to proceed judiciously and discreetly as possible.
Alderman Miller.
It's my understanding, I've been reading a lot about the open and close, that we are beyond the period for closed session because we've gotten the report. Also, the going to closed session belongs to the body. And this council has yet to really even deliberate on anything because we didn't get an opportunity to do that. And no one can force closed session. You can force open session, but not a closed session. I would have preferred that we, I don't really have a problem with you being in closed session when Mr. Pelkey is speaking. He might not like that. However, I think that this council should have an opportunity to deliberate on its own with no parties in. And so I'm unclear on that process.
Deliberation without the attendees in closed session is correct. That would happen.
I'm not clear on the procedure on who's chairing the meeting during said closed session. I know on the schedule, I just, I thought that I would be actually
Well, let's
doing
be-
the motions right now and going, because the whole issue, I don't understand why I'm not already the presiding officer.
because we're not discussing any particular issue. And for the record, there's 2 of the potential 3 items that I've recused myself from because I'm trying to think of the items that may be discussed. Well, I will recuse myself as appropriate, as I've already announced. I can't announce the names in public because they're part of the procedures, but understand that contrary to some belief, I will behave in an ethical manner.
I would expect that.
It's not what you, anyway. Okay.
Alderman Nelson.
Thanks, John. Alderman Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question is to Mr. City Attorney. Do we have to go into closed session, or can this be all done in open session? Since we've already got the response back from the so-called investigative officer, I guess the facts are what they are, or they are. I'd prefer to be in open. Does it have to be in a closed session?
Yes. Pursuant to, and contrary to what Alderwoman Wilhelm stated, what she thought earlier, but pursuant to the statute cited on the Common Council action sheet, the matter is still in process, is my opinion. And as I said earlier, code requirement is complaint will be considered as judiciously and discreetly as possible. So.
Okay, then I have a follow-up to that. So then if we are, so your recommendation is that we are to go into closed session, I guess, and if that's the way it is, then I would like to see all parties remain here. And just, I mean, because there's a lot of this stuff that comes out afterwards, and there's another email, and there's all this, and there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I have a number of questions about how this investigator, in air quotes, came up with what he came up with. So I guess if that's where we're going to roll, then we roll.
Deliberation is without the attendance of those parties.
Holfer, then Alderman Barber, then Alderman.
Just would like some clarification from Alderman Nelson. The comment, so-called investigator, and air quotes investigator.
Just to go on record as far as just one small piece as we're in this open arena, was this investigator, and I say it like that because I question when you're investigating something, that's a question and answer time. To quote the investigator, to Mr. Pelkey, I will not question you, I will listen. You have to have follow-up. You have to have follow-up when you're investigating something, period. And when you're here and somebody requests that they speak with you not in this venue, and you refuse to do that, as Alderwoman Wilhelm asked, that's a flag. When you sit there and you don't take note, you have nothing to add, in my opinion, you've already come up with your conclusions. And I'm watching this play out. And that's where I have the questions, is that's why I say it in air quotes. And that's why I didn't understand that type of investigation. I understand it's a listening session. Well, what if, the complainant would have said, well, I mean, there's got to be a back and forth because you need clarification on points. You need clarification on points. You need to, basically come around and double check what your facts are. you want to reconfirm either compliance or non-compliance. There's a whole checklist when you're investigating something. As we all know, investigators are different. Everybody's got their own style. But the basic, all the way across the board, is it's a question and answer time. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I just wasn't sure because I didn't hear any of those questions when the person was here giving the report. So,
When I had some experience with the State Ethics Board, the process that they used was to have a complaint filed, all the details submitted, then it was investigated by staff. They asked for a response from myself. I gave the response. I requested to be in closed session, and it was denied, saying that the process was to do an investigation. I had no input other than to do the written data that was submitted, and that's where it ended up. No opportunity to discuss it once the determination or once that was presented as evidence, an investigation, and then their determination, which is what we have right now in our process.
Yeah. It's just my microphone now. I guess, I've spent quite a bit of time trying to understand, presiding officer and closed sessions. My understanding, the presiding officer of the issue is to announce the closed session, and I'm actually not being able to preside at the meeting, actually, until we go into closed session. That seems like a very odd procedure to me. I've never experienced that. So I would question how one can be a presiding officer to make the closed session happen, but yet then leave and some new presiding officer takes over when it's the presiding officer that is supposed to announce it. And then once you're in, it's like, okay, then the chair magically switch. So the power of the presiding officer lies in the position, not the person. And I think that's an inappropriate procedure, but I think that will be taken up at a different time.
It's my understanding that the officer, I was asked to leave after I was allowed to vote to go to closed session. That's when I was asked to leave. So it was the chair, the mayor's position, that took us there. I had to leave afterwards. So I guess this is just a conveyance of going to closed session. Nothing is being determined, nothing is being decided. It's at that point that the mayor would be asked to leave based upon what my history was in terms of being asked to leave after we were in closed session. But I voted to go to closed session without anybody having a problem with that.
What is the proper legal procedure to turn a meeting over after the presiding officer of the announcement of the closed session leaves, and then you have a non-presiding officer, then that just becomes the new presiding officer? That process makes very little sense to me, so.
I understand there's room for debate. There are also other different items within this subject matter. I also understand the position that it's essentially not participation, subject, parts of the proceeding. And that this is process, but there's room for debate on it.
Okay, a follow-up to that. So I'm looking at September 2014, page 287 of the Wisconsin Open Meetings Law, legal comment by Claire Silverman. The discussion or the decision regarding whether a closed session is warranted belongs to the governmental body. The law does not authorize a person who is the subject of a closed session to demand that the matter be discussed in session. So you can't demand an open, but you cannot demand closed. Personally, I would like to say that if I was in a situation, I would probably want to close. So I can completely understand that. I just, I think what we have here is a document that is very poorly written and a process that's even poorer. So I guess we have to deal with what we have.
Alderman Barber.
I don't know what the process should or shouldn't be, but aren't we just going to vote whether to go to closed session or not at this point? I think it's a simple vote, whether we go to closed session or not.
That was to naming participants. That was withdrawn by Alderman Hofer.
I move that we go to closed session.
Who's going to be that?
I'd be open to an amendment. I would say my original was just go to closed session as the council.
Be prepared, because we've had legal opinion that says the mayor is part of the council. I'm not gonna permit my reputation to have additional charges put against it without me hearing those charges or being able to answer them. It's not gonna happen. Agreed.
Then it's the motion would be to go to closed session with
Everybody.
everybody.
So let me read that, so we get it on the record. Motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 1985 sub 1 sub F. I read this prior. Considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations, and to re-enter open session at the same place thereafter to act on such matters discussed therein and include in the closed sessions the mayor, director of administration, and citizen complainant Andy Pelkey as it deems appropriate.
So move.
Is there a second?
That is my motion.
Is there a second? You gotta push your button. Seconded by Alderman Hofer. Alderman Hofer.
Was months and months ago. Now we find ourselves in a situation where we have political opponents set to make decisions for or against somebody during an election cycle. I don't see how this is going to come out well for anybody, to be honest with you. I don't think I don't think the council at this particular point in time is going to be an appropriate body to do this anyway. That's just my, I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test, it doesn't look good.
Well, there's some good statements there. I don't think that was thought about too well when it was put together, but, so the motion is to go in closed session, allow everyone basically that's in the room here. And then after the Mr. Pelkey has a chance, then we will come into open and then go back into for deliberation? Is that the process?
So they would
Correct.
have to leave.
So 3 people would leave
Yes.
and we would be able to deliberate.
3 people can comment.
I can live with that as long as the council has an opportunity to have a deliberation.
Not appropriate. Not appropriate.
I'll suspend the rules to allow him to speak.
I'll second that.
It's silly season here in the city of Franklin. All those in favor, suspend the rules. Say
Aye.
We have a motion on the
Actually, that's not true. Alderman Elton.
So, Alderman Holfer, you asked earlier about, oh, my ears are still ringing, so I'm sorry if I'm a little tone deaf today.
Not a traffic stop.
Oh, we talk gentle on traffic stops, gentle.
Here's your traffic stop.
Man, I am, yeah, my ears are ringing. I apologize. So, if I'm talking loud, I don't want to talk too soft. So my question is, you asked me about some examples and what I meant by the air quotes. So are you saying that you shouldn't be, in an investigation, that you shouldn't ask questions? Oh, good. Thank you.
Hold on. First of all, you're going back and forth.
I yield. If he answered, I yield.
No, that wasn't the intent at all. I was genuinely surprised because when the gentleman was here and made his presentations and we had a general discussion and asked if there were questions. Well, I'm not talking about it. I'm just saying there was a discussion and we had the opportunity, and I didn't hear that. So I was genuinely surprised.
The timing when the gentleman was here and getting to know what his background was, his style was, and when he, I don't want to go into the details of what was said, but my disappointment with the things I mentioned earlier, I didn't deem appropriate at that time. I thought that this was still going to be an ongoing something. I yield.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to go into closed session with the 3 attendees. Madam Clerk.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Eichman.
Aye.
Alderman Holfer.
Aye.
Motion carries. 5 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. With that, we will enter closed session.
Well, we might have to, yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, not initially.
Recording stopped.
potential motion to state, with regard to the complaint reviewed and deliberated in closed session, no action taken, the matter is closed.
Could you repeat that? I was trying to get her microphone off because it was echoing.
A motion to state, with regard to the complaint reviewed and deliberated in closed session, no action taken, the matter is closed.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing no opposed, the motion carries. City Attorney, do you have another motion?
Potential motion to confirm selections of Judge Riley and to proceed with the other matters processes as discussed in closed session.
Oh, who made the motion? City Attorney can't make the motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Do we have, you did the first and second the first time around? Yeah. Okay. All right, we have first and a second for the motion. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, motion carries. Any other business?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion's made and seconded to adjourn.
Who seconded?
Ed. All those in favor? Aye. No opposed, we are adjourned. What time is it? 11:32. Thank you.
A close record.